Of the minutes. The minutes were distributed. Did anyone have any corrections or additions to the minutes?
This chair is too high.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All right, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, minutes are approved. Item 3, public comments. Fortunately, I don't see any
Wait,
public
stop,
here.
just a minute. The Cupcakes would like to acknowledge Scott's 40th birthday. Happy birthday, Scott.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Let's move on to, anything else? No, I'm kidding. Let's move on to my favorite part of every meeting, and that is our library director's report.
Great, thank you so much. It's great to see everybody. Let's see, my library director's report, what did I say? So, we did have our commission retreat, and also, since the retreat, the strategic plan was formally adopted by the commission as well, just so you know. That was February 6th. I wasn't even at the meeting, it was because I was sick, but it was on the consent agenda because they knew everything by then. And we actually talked about it a little bit more at the retreat. And I just basically kind of gave them real high-level highlights of last year. I picked out the major things from the strategic plan that we are going to be doing in the coming year, including letting them know that I will be retiring, not until 2020, but still, it's within the next fiscal year. So it impacts activities and funding. It'll actually free up a little bit of money, so somebody would be hired in at a lower level than me, because I've been here 10 years, so. And then the only thing that I really wanted you to know, so everything went fine with that. They did have an interesting question about the Library of Things. Actually, it was the mayor had a question. The Library of Things, I don't know how much we've talked about that. We've mentioned that it's coming, we were getting a grant for it. And the mayor wanted to be sure that we did not take business away from the rental shop in town. And so I didn't, I mean, we could be taking away business from a bookstore right now too, as well, because we loan books instead of, sell books, but that's definitely not the intent of a Library of Things.
So how far has it really progressed? I mean, I know we did the survey, and I know, I kind of understood it, but it still seems pretty undefined, not ill-defined, but undefined.
Yeah, well, that's what I think the committee is spending a lot of time doing right now, is not necessarily defining the items in the Library of Things, but defining the policy, the packaging, those kinds of things. Is that right?
Yep,
Yeah.
we have a meeting next week.
Yeah, so
I
that,
definitely have questions as usual, but about it.
well,
but
she is the person to talk to because she goes to those meetings.
Okay, I mean, I thought it still needed some definition. I was thinking.
Oh, yeah, we don't
how do
plan
you-
on opening it until June.
Yeah,
Yeah. But how do you what? What's your question?
questions are around like, I mean, it's so broad, you could need a warehouse.
Right.
And so do you have sufficient space? Have you thought
But,
through how-
I mean, our space will help define that. Since our
Okay.
space is limited, then we will only
So the
purchase things
things-
that will be fitting within our space.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes, like, a lack of something helps you. You know what I mean? Because it gives you parameters that you have to work with.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from
Yeah.
that angle. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And then the other thing that I had attached to this was the ALA fine statement. And I just really wanted to let you know that it had been written up, that the ALA Council, the American Library Association Council, at their midwinter meeting, did want to kind of make a general statement to the world saying that we believe fines can be a barrier to access for certain people. And I think it's nice to have that kind of out there in the world so that we can, as we move forward, thinking about funding in the future And fines are one of those things that we do across Link. So if one library doesn't have fines, all of us don't have fines, is the way it needs to work. So right now, there are too many libraries which rely on fines as income, and it doesn't have to be very much to help. So like at our library, we get about 40,000.
A little bit more.
We budget for that about 40,000 a year. So I mean, that helps, you know, that's some salary money or whatever, right? But there are other libraries who are much more dependent on it than us even. And so there's a couple of things, like regardless of the money, like do people think that getting rid of fines is a good idea? And there are some pushback arguments on that. But what ALA is saying is that despite those arguments, they think it proves to be more of a barrier to too many people than some people who might say, oh, you know, it teaches kids responsibility or something. We tend to not like to have something punitive in alignment with reading, because we think reading should be pleasurable, and it's already hard enough for enough kids, besides adding the cost of fines to it and them being responsible for those fines, when often the reason they have fines has nothing to do with them. It's not kids who are generally earning the fine. So lots of times people are talking about getting rid of fines just for kids even. And that doesn't mean you wouldn't get your book back. If you don't get your book, you like charge for the book. So anyway, I just wanted you to kind of be aware of that conversation out there in the ether and what the profession kind of says about it. Right now, because too many libraries in Link are dependent on the money, we're not going to be talking about this anytime soon. But as more conversations happen around funding in the future, which I think we will see happen at the Library District Advisory Committee level, then that might be a topic that comes back up. So I just kind of am throwing that out there for information.
And that isn't an unusual way to do business for ALA. I was on the council there for 3 years. And while many of the things that we passed would work very well in a perfect environment, in many cases, there wasn't a lot of touch with reality on.
Yeah.
At one point, I was on during the time that the USSR was breaking up. And we came within, I think, 3 votes of passing a resolution opposing the dissolution of the USSR. So
Oh my goodness, how interesting is that? Yeah, that's very interesting.
It's a little bit out of their scope.
Yeah, it seems a little out, exactly, I was gonna say the same thing, a little out of the scope. But anyway, so just because ALA says it doesn't mean it's gospel or anything, but it's something to, you know, that can influence a decision in the future.
Did they do any studies on actually if the fines do
Yes.
create barriers?
Yes, there are studies on that. There are studies also on whether the fines actually get items back for you, are
That's
effective.
my
I
other
could
question,
I could
yeah.
pull that information together, since it's kind of
Okay.
a moot topic right now, that
Okay.
we're not really gonna be discussing it.
Okay.
You know, but if it really came to pass that we were talking about not having $40,000 worth of income, what a lot of libraries have done is they have said, we are not gonna charge fines on children's materials only. Because it's that population that you specifically don't want to create the barrier for. And again, that doesn't mean you don't get the book back. What happens is, instead of like charging fines, you send them a bill for the entire book if you don't see it after a month or whatever it's supposed to come back, right? A couple months down the road.
And
So,
I was gonna say, I did a little bit of research on it, and I mean, the libraries that aren't charging fines, some of them take the privileges away if you don't return the books.
yeah, oh yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't, it's a different means of getting
Yeah.
things. So if you have people that want to use the library and I mean, I don't know how bad it has to get before we would.
We have a $25 block on your card when you accrue $25 worth of fines. Some libraries are much, much lower. They're like at 10, for instance. That's not very much really at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
When you're a high user and you lose a few books, in a child's room or something like that. It can, slip under your car seat. I mean, whatever, it happens. But anyway, just so you know, that's out there in the ether that people talk about these things. And, Multnomah County does something, Washington County does something. That doesn't mean Clackamas County is gonna do the same thing. We're in a different financial place, first of all. And we're just not there in our conversation with all of our stakeholders as well.
Do we have people complaining about fines? I mean, I'm curious because one of the things I read was that, staff likes not having to collect fines.
Staff loves not having to talk about negative things with patrons.
Yeah, so I was wondering is that a relevant
What do you
topic?
think?
I think you get a few here and there that complain about it. We're also really good at working with patrons on their fines, so,
Well, that's what I was thinking, actually, that actually kind of makes more sense to me.
yeah.
Well, because really it is about the materials, right? We just want to have the materials so that we can offer them to more people. So we're happy to, and we want people to have access to the library. So we're happy to work with people. They work a little bit with us, we work with them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. We're gonna be doing some additional work down in the basement of the Carnegie. I think I told you that, as we were doing like noise baffling upstairs, we kind of realized, we've got so many people downstairs that might benefit from, in the staff area, might benefit from some noise baffles as well. So we're gonna do some work on that eventually. As we go into the budget process, we're also kind of looking at staffing to make sure that that's lined up appropriately and the right people are doing the right thing. Every so often you should be taking a look at that. And I think I told you before that we have a position of a person that has been there a long time and she's not working right now, and that position probably will be open. So that provides an opportunity for us to kind of look at the work that she was doing and if that's what we need to continue. So, summer reading is going crazy as far as getting ready, and then Gina is also planning a community-wide read for next fall. So she's sending out all these surveys to people like, well, would you like this better or this better, to kind of get an idea. Like she really wants the first one. We've done like a couple in the past, but very long time ago. She wants the first one to be really good. Statistically speaking, we're right in the ballpark of what we've been doing. A couple things are up, a couple things are down, but everything is right in that median line. And that's, I think, about all I have specifically for my reports. Any questions?
No questions. All right,
Okay.
we'll move along then to item 5, additional ALA policy.
Yep. And this is the policy on confidentiality of library records that I sent to you, and this should have been included in the packet last month. So it's just another one of those policies that goes along with code of ethics and all that stuff that lets you know that we really consider patrons' privacy to be of utmost importance and do everything we can to protect that privacy. Sometimes they don't like it because they don't feel that strongly about their own privacy, but we do. So we're kind of one of the last bastions, it seems like, it's getting a little bit better out there in the world, but once people have realized what happens when your privacy has gone away. But we make every effort to protect people's privacy. And actually, when did that policy change about the husbands and the wives and stuff?
Oh, just the beginning, just a month ago.
Just a month ago. Yeah, it used to be that if your spouse or partner or whatever had put a book on hold, you could come into the library and pick it up on your card. And we were like, it's a lot more clear if you just keep it on the same card, first of all. And really, it's like, there could be cases where you just didn't really want your spouse seeing what you were, there are those cases, or your partner or whatever, right? So we changed it, we gave people lots of notice, and we said, this is changing, and unless you have permission, this is the way it's gonna be. And then we let them, didn't we give them like a little sticker where they could write that information on their own card?
On their own card,
That they would have gotten from their,
or suggested they, took a picture with their camera.
yeah,
of the
something
other
like,
card.
you get the information
Yeah.
of your spouse's card and use that, but from here on out, it's gonna be like, if it's a hold on this, then that's gonna be checked out on this card, and just keep the card straight. So, any questions on that policy? I think you've been thoroughly indoctrinated on policies from ALA now.
I'll make a motion to accept the policy.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the ALA policy on the confidentiality of library records, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. All right.
Great. Okay, let me explain this one. So, when we last met, we looked at the unattended children policy, and, at one point, I said, it looked like we were gonna get into like little wordsmithing going on. I was like, okay, we're good in concept, will you let me just like take it back and fix it up? And you were like, oh yeah, that's fine. Well, we got a phone call from a gentleman who listens to these meetings or watches
What?
over whatever. I got a gentleman from somebody who watches our meetings, and he objected to that. And I got in touch with the attorney, he had a few objections, and the attorney was like, I'm fine with what you've done and what you said you were gonna do, but I thought, you know what, it doesn't hurt for you guys to see the finished product. So I included the finished product exactly as we are going to be rolling it out. And I would like for you to adopt this month in this form, so that anybody who thinks that you're not aware of the final product and what's going to be like, what we are going to use in the library, will know that you've accepted it and the final product.
So the individual's objection was not to the policy itself, but to the fact that we tasked you with just fixing it up and we were okay with that.
He also said, there was a couple things in it that he didn't like. He said something about the word guardian needed to be defined. I don't think we're even actually using it at that point. We took out guardian, we changed everything to caregiver or whatever.
Yep.
And there was one other thing. I can't remember what it was. But again, our attorney was like fine with what we had done before. But I just thought, you know what, here's the finished product. There is absolutely nothing wrong with bringing it to you again and saying, here's the finished product.
Those sound like valid input. So that's a good thing.
Well, and the shocking thing is somebody actually watches us and pays attention. So now we know, right? So process is very important to people, and that's completely valid, you know? So I need somebody to.
I'll make a
represent it.
motion to accept the revised behavior policy. Is that what we're calling
It's
it?
the unattended children policy.
Oh, unattended children policy.
Yep.
I second.
All right, all those in favor of approval of the unattended children policy, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right,
Great, thank
unanimous.
you. And then just so you know that, since it changed a little bit, we're gonna be rolling this out over a little bit of time. So we'll like put up some notice in the children's area, so people are, Barrett, our Miller, our youth services person, has already created some really cute slides that'll go up on the monitor in the children's area and all that, so people will get notice. Oh, we should tell them about the bathroom policy too.
Yeah.
So, speaking of policies, the next one that we wanted to review is the behavior policy. And this
Oh,
was,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was like,
Yeah, I
I
know.
thought there was a behavioral policy.
yeah, there is, absolutely.
Oh, good.
So, you know, we have an adopted behavior policy, so don't feel like we're operating without a behavior policy, believe me. But what we wanted to do was reorganize it a little bit so that the offenses are kind of like grouped into similar groupings of like impact of how it, we're going to enforce the rule on people. So that we kind of started off with low-level offenses. And then, and said, if you break one of these rules, this is what's gonna happen. And then as we go down the page under 17 through 22, they're a little bit, worse, like bringing guns into the library and stuff like that. If you do this, then this is what is gonna happen. Regardless of what happens, what we like to do in most situations, and we can tell you of an example that just happened last week, we like to give people second chances. Unless they're just like so outrageously horrible that it's really clear that behavior is never gonna change by that individual, and they just are never gonna be anything but a problem in the library. So we like to give people like chances. But like, for instance, last week we had somebody and we said, okay, this is the first time you've been here and this is the first time you've done this, but we still need you to be gone for 30 days. And if you come back and act this way again, you're gonna be trespassed permanently. Because she more or less attacked another patron. She didn't actually touch the other person, but she kind of went for them, right? In addition to a lot of other things that was going on, and the police had to be called and she was handcuffed, and it was extremely unpleasant and super sad, super sad. So, we certainly didn't want to be dealing with her the next day because there was no way that her behavior was going to be better the next day. I mean, she just had multiple issues that were in the way of good behavior or what we expect out of a library. So we said 30 days, but the police officer said, do you want us to trespass her? Which means permanent. And we're like, please no. Like, let's try this. And sometimes like we never even see people like that again, it's like, let's not exclude them if we don't have to. So that's kind of like how we operate, but so this is basically the same rules that we had before, but reorganized. And then we've changed a little bit of the language. So for instance, on number 21, it reads engaging in sexual conduct as defined, blah, 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 but not limited to. And we used to have things in there like upskirting, because that was the thing at the time. Just to kind of give an example of like, this may seem like a low level thing, but it's not. This is like really terrible. So that's why we included it. And we're kind of like ratcheting back on examples there and kind of pulling some of that stuff out. However, the barefoot one, where's that one?
Yeah, that is number 14.
Number 14, entering the library with bare feet or a bare chest. What we have discovered this week is that you have to define bare feet, because there were 2 people this week that were walking around in socks, and that's still not safe, because one of them was this woman and she ended up slipping on the hardwood floor and hurting herself. And so we're gonna have to change that language a little bit, like to say, shoes are required, shoes of some sort are required. So those are the kinds of changes that we're making. We've got a few ideas from staff, but I already included some of the ideas from staff as well. So what I don't want to go through this line by line, but I really want to know if you have gone through it line by line or not, if you have any feedback on it.
There was one thing that bothered me.
Okay,
And that was twice in here, it says that there will be a determination of length of whatever it is that's gonna happen. But nowhere does it say how it's gonna be determined, whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. And I don't have any difficulty with that personally.
right.
But I would think that in some cases, there might be opportunity for legal action because, how did you decide that I was gonna be banned from the library for 14 days?
Right. That's a good thing to define that, and we might be able to do that by using those two sections as a guide. Because like a lot of the things in section 1 are kind of like, please correct, and you're fine once you've corrected it. Or go away until you can correct it kind of thing, you know? Come back once you've corrected it kind of thing, and we could maybe address that way.
One of the last sentences does say the following progression scale will be used to determine the length of the exclusion. So the first time we deal with you, we educate you.
But who does that and what's the process? I think that's important to spell out a little bit more clearly. At what level does that decision get made and how does it get communicated to the patron? And is there a redress for it or
Sure.
whatever?
So, yeah, we can add some of that language. We have an exclusion form, which people can get a copy of if they like stick around long enough for it. And there is like an opportunity for them to say something. So I can put that in here.
Might be helpful to add that, it's kind of the same thing as if somebody challenges a book in the library. There's a clear process about what happens with that. I think this ought to be equally as clear.
Okay.
And the whole idea of a progressing scale with no clarification is, I think, a little dangerous because somebody brings a gun into the library and it says the following scale will be used to determine the length. And you give them a month and they say, well, it says right here, 1
Yeah,
day.
we need to move that.
Yeah,
probably.
it says rule 17 through 22 will progress at a faster rate.
Yeah, but then that's really loose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can fix that.
So on number 19, not being a gun owner, I don't know about these codes. Does that cover if somebody has a legal carry permit?
Yeah, that excludes legal carry. So the thing about legal carry is that we would probably never know because those are concealed weapon thing, yeah.
Right, okay. I'm not familiar with the regulations, so.
Well, what's interesting that we learned is that also excludes knives. So you can actually have certain kinds of weapons on you and we can't say much about it. Unless you're threatening somebody with it.
And we found that out after we had a patron in who had a really long knife.
Yeah,
There was nothing we could do about it.
yeah. So, I'm happy to take, you can just
Yeah.
email me comments too. What I would like to do is like, work on this and bring it back to you again next month in a draft form. And, incorporating comments from my staff. And so absolutely, we can't have a discussion on email, but you can write to me directly, anything else that you think of. And then, this is the kind of thing that, you know, the other lens that I would really love to have people look at this is, it's hard for us to do it, is kind of looking at it with like an equity lens. Is there anything here that we are refusing to let people do that really creates barriers somehow? And we think about this a lot, actually, but it's hard for us though. But like, we have a rule in here about not sleeping. Well, if you're a homeless person and you're sleeping outside, you are very tired. And being in a warm, nice place like a library, it's hard not to be asleep. And so that's a rule that we end up enforcing often, and we feel really bad about it. But it's also, we're not a hotel, you know? And so there's a lot of tensions that are created around some of these things that seem very simple, but because we have everybody come to the library, it can create tensions where maybe some don't need to be. Now, I'm not saying we should allow sleeping, because the next thing you know, then people are stretched out over your furniture snoring, and it's like creates a really bad environment for other people, you know? And the library has to be a safe, nice environment for everybody, so that's the goal. But if you could take a look at it with like a lens, that would help us out. Or any kind of lens, that, you know, disability lens, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you
I know
ever,
you can't speak for everybody, I'm not saying that, but, pardon?
have you ever had a person who had a laptop computer or something and they just nodded off?
Yeah,
That happens, I would think
I know.
Don't have any boring books or something.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's kind of it's, yeah, that happens,
Would you approach them, say, ma'am or sir?
yeah. And most people are fine with it. If they just nod it off and they don't mean to, that's one thing. Even people who would like to take a nap in the library for whatever reason, understand that when we say we don't allow sleeping in the library, or that we need to like make sure that they're okay. What if they're like passed out or worse, you know? Then there are those people who get really, really angry with us over that rule. So we do have that, and it's something that comes up frequently. So that would be a great help to us. The other thing I might mention at this point is that the upstairs bathroom seems to attract frequent messes somehow that are really pretty bad, to the point where we have to close down the bathroom. And so we are planning on moving to a system of leaving it locked, and that you make people ask for the key at the reference desk and kind of just sign it out there and test that system for a while. It could be that we're just moving messes downstairs, I don't know, to the other bathrooms. But it happens frequently enough that we feel like we need to do something in order to protect the property that we have and make sure that we're providing a clean space for everybody. So just so you know, these are all the things that they don't teach you in library school either. Yeah.
So move on to the budget process.
Yes, great. Now, since I wrote that little budget report, which was very short, we did get I don't think it was in there, we got our estimate from the county as to our 1920 budget, and it's increased by 3%. So it will at least be keeping up with costs. They are very, very conservative about what they estimate up at the county. So, which is great, because then we budget within that framework and working with the city, and I don't know what we'll be getting from the city yet, but now that we've got our estimate from the county, we can like work on that and figure things out for next year. So, that has come in, and the first step that we were required to do by the city was just kind of like, list out all the people who are still working for us, tell them about any staffing changes that were gonna be happening that would impact the next fiscal year, and kind of make an estimate of like any different unusual hours or anything like that. So it's very, very, very rough, very rough. And then Denise and I all sit down. God bless Denise, she is the best. She's already like figured most of this stuff out. I just have to kind of go down the line and say yes, no, whatever. She's figured out what we have spent and worked with so far this year, and worked with the finance department, also estimates what they think we will spend this year on each line item. And then we can prepare an estimate of what we think that's gonna look like next year. Like, we need more money for programs, for instance, and I can tell you that's one that definitely needs increased. Fortunately, this year, we got our first check from the county, and because they pay out for the fiscal year in January and like May or June. Because, you know, they have to collect all the taxes for it first, right? And so we got our first check, which is always our big one, and it was $10,000 more than our estimate for all of the year that we had from last year for this year.
Wow.
And the reason is, there was a settlement with Comcast, and the county got a payout, and some of that went into our check somehow, right? So this year we'll see a little bump, which will be really nice, because our second check is usually about like, as I said, we got the bulk of our money now, and then we'll get like another maybe 150,000 or whatever. So that's like 160,000 more than we thought we were gonna get this year, which is phenomenal, and we will use it. But we can't expect that to happen every year. So that was a pleasant little surprise, and we're really grateful for it. So it looks like we should be in pretty good shape for this year, and then we're working on next year. And probably by next month, we'll have something we can show them, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah. Can show you some estimates and kind of the areas where we like have little pinch points, basically like collection, staffing, and programs. Right? Yeah. All the big things.
If there's money unexpended at the end of the budget year, are you allowed to carry it over?
We are.
To the following year?
We are.
That's good.
It is good. The city's been great about that, but the district money in particular, it's our money. So it has to be expended by the library, so that's really helpful. And then, as I mentioned to you guys before, Oregon City does not charge any of departments like allocated costs, so they don't charge us, I don't know, they wouldn't charge us rent because we're paying a bond, but they could charge certain departments like rent or whatever. I think those departments are already paying rent, but whatever. You know what I'm talking about. We don't get charged for HR, we don't get charged for finance. The only things we pay for are some IT. They do spread that cost out, and then some maintenance. So all the other costs are not like allocated or anything, which is very, very helpful. So essentially, you know, the city is not making money off of the district, which it can kind of feel like the city's making money off of the district if it like charges allocated costs. But when it charges everybody allocated costs, it gets murkier, you know? So just where it comes from, general fund or district funds or whatever. So anyway, so yes, we get to carry it over.
But at the library district level, allocated cost is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
I mean, it's probably one of the most discussed item when we look at numbers in terms of how the dollars are being spent.
Any more comments? All right, we will move on to item number 9, communications. Why don't we start with Nick? Did you have an LDEC meeting?
Yeah, we actually met this month.
Oh, that's
I think for the
right.
first time. And Mo put me out there by myself again, 2 months in a row.
I was off skiing.
Yeah, really. Probably the biggest discussion that was had is that, we talked about it before with the task force that was being set up to look at the originating agreement and the agreements between the cities with the IGAs, the intergovernmental agreements. So there's the master agreement and then the intergovernmental agreements, and that's going to be looked at in total. So there's been a lot of discussion at LDAC about how that review will be done, how it will be organized, who's going to approve what before it goes to the county commission, and so that will continue on. The overall task force, probably that whole it's kind of planned for about 1.5 years. So it's not a brief study that's going to happen. It's going to be over a long period of time. And that's probably, like I said, that's probably the biggest thing that's been going on with LDAC. There's also, there's a data group that reviews the library directors. Well, each library puts a report together that shows how the dollars are being spent, within the library, the ones that are coming directly from the county or from the library district, I should say, and then the dollars that are coming or allocations that are coming from cities. So that's another ongoing discussion also. That's pretty much it for the report.
Any questions?
Just so you know, also at the district level, I was in interviews for the candidate to replace the network manager, Josh's boss.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Greg Williams was promoted up the chain at the county, and libraries will still fall under all that group of things that he oversees. But then they need to hire a new manager specifically for Link services, Link Library Services. So that was the second round of interviews, and so that should be getting decided on very, very soon, which will be really interesting because that person really, really impacts how we operate and how well we operate. But we've got some great candidates, so I'm not concerned at all. It'll be good,
Good to hear.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Oh, one other thing that came up, because we went on a tour of the facility last year with the way that books, all that whole process.
Yeah.
And there were other people that are interested, so that's gonna be set up again, and
Oh, good.
Greg's gonna announce, this is gonna be more open to the general,
Yeah,
people. So
Great.
it'll be an opportunity for people that haven't gone through it before.
Larry, Cynthia, and Carrie haven't been up there, have they?
no. And
It's worth seeing.
It's really fascinating because it's an
amazing.
automated materials handler that has got 30 bins, I think. And so it takes all the materials from the entire county and resorts them out for holds and then things just going back to the library. And it super simplifies what we have to do at each library. And it's fascinating watching it.
It is.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So if I hear about that, I'll let you all guys know.
All right, thank you, Nick. Cynthia, you went to your first foundation board meeting?
I did, January 22nd, and it was very interesting to me as a new person, just to see how the whole thing worked and what it was up to. So there was quite a bit of time spent on sort of reorganizing the infrastructure of that committee. We made a determination that Karen Martini should actually be named the executive director of the foundation. Her title had been secretary, and that didn't quite reflect the scope of the role that she was playing. And I think in terms of being a 501c3, having a more clarified role for her was important. So Karen Martini was duly voted in as the executive director of the foundation. And then the fiscal piece of the foundation is passing to Glenda Saunders, which is great because she is a CPA and she made several recommendations about changes that could and should be made to how money is allocated into various accounts as revenues come in. There's the previous people who managed that did a great job and with great heart. But from a CPA's point of view, they needed to be streamlined a little bit and cleaned up and clarified. And so we did that. And I think it'll be really she'll be a really great asset to the foundation board in that really clear CPA management of foundation revenues. And then in equally good news, B&B Leasing, where we meet, is going to provide the foundation with some office space. And so we took a little field trip to the office space there, and it's quite nice. And hasn't been determined yet exactly what's going in there or what activities will take place in the office space, but then we'll have a place to keep those foundation records and fiscal records and other kinds of things that kind of give the foundation a little more stability and credence, I guess you might say, in the eyes of the public. And then finally, we talked about the Dolly Parton Imagination Library Project, and I don't know if that's been mentioned here, but it's Dolly Parton has a foundation, the function of which is to get free books into the hands of kids. And there's money available, matching funds for libraries to get additional books into the hands of kids, books that they can take home. And so our next month's meeting will focus on how to begin to more seriously explore and implement the Dolly Parton Imagination Library Project.
All right, any questions? All right, let's go to, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you as well. And let's go to Ken, who I believe you just attended the Friends Library meeting?
A couple things took place. One was that our library director asked for some funds and got them for the children's program.
Yay,
Yay,
$3,500.
$3,500.
A lot.
that seemed nice. There was a little bit of shock and awe when the people from the building the owner of the building that they're moving the library to, said that they could start moving in on the first of the month. And I think people were not ready to be able to do that, or had not
Yeah.
thought it through.
Did you guys all know that the Friends of the Library are gonna move? The bookstore.
The bookstores.
So it's gonna move into your building, Scott.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
So
well,
we're-
convenient.
Yes. So it's gonna be perfect, actually, because it's gonna be in the Tarleton Building, which is just on the other side of the staff parking lot, which is just uphill from the library. And it's gonna be on the corner closest to the library, facing the parking lot where H&R Block was. So
Okay.
H&R Block is gone, and the Friends of the Library bookstore is moving in there, and they were
great.
discussing all the particulars today.
Oh,
Yes.
And so that's a pretty, move pretty quick.
Yes, it was going to be available very fast, and so they're a little shocked. But I think they're going to need some labor to help them move too. And I don't know if they've got that arranged or will have it arranged or not.
They will, yeah.
And I don't know if I have much else to say about it. It seems to be a pretty good organization that gets things done and makes some money.
Yeah. They plug along and they, they steadily make money. So although the amounts are a little bit smaller that we get from the Friends than the foundation, for instance, they're regular. We can count on a certain amount every year, and they're really dedicated to programs. So I got some, check for $3,500 today to go towards children's programs. And they had already made another pledge for $3,000 that we will get in addition to that will split between adults and children. And they really want our adult services person to bring them a request for some programming. And since she's gonna do the community ride read, she tells me she's kind of saving up her program money from them for that, for next fall. So, yeah, they're just a great group.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
A great bookstore. I
Yeah.
end up spending about $20, get about 10 books every time I come.
Excellent, keep doing that because it comes back to the library,
Yeah.
Scott.
All right, thank you, Ken. Next item is future agenda items.
And so I had proposed that calendar to you and I realized, I better ask them some staff if they're gonna be able to meet my calendar that I set up here for you. So next month, we will have the youth services librarian, Barrett Miller, will be here and present something to us about what she does. And I think I'm gonna have her start like right at 5 so that, because she has to go back to the library and be on desk. So we'll do that first. Hopefully it will be okay. And then continue on with our business. And then I'll be bringing back the behavior policy for sure as well. There might be something out and more budget info if we have it.
Okay, great. Is there any new business or other business? Well, I just want to say thank you to Mo for all the birthday celebration. I appreciate it very much.
Everybody is invited to join us at the verdict. We are going after we have cupcakes, if
Yes.
people would like cupcakes.
Thank you. Well, since there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned.